Wickenderfer is absent with notice. Commissioners Jackson,
Here, Southfield.
Lubes,
Here in Clausen.
Joliet,
Here in Waterford Township.
Nelson.
Here at Waterford Township.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Pam, do we have a flag? You're amazing. All righty, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty, thank you, Pam. Alrighty, given we have a consent agenda, are there any changes to, yes? Were you gonna say something, Pam?
No, go ahead.
Oh, excellent. Were there any changes to the consent agenda? Alrighty, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Are you going to approve the minutes, or are we doing the agenda and the consent agenda separate?
Ooh, so Pam, given that this is literally the first committee meeting, I believe that we've had a consent agenda, do we typically just do them together? So we can do together?
Yeah, you can approve the agenda all in one as it stands.
So should I go back procedural wise and ask if there's any corrections or changes to either the consent or regular agenda?
Well, we didn't approve the minutes yet. The minutes would go first, but we can go back to it if you like, or however you wish.
Ooh, I'm sorry, Pam, I jumped around a little bit. I apologize for that, everyone. Are there any corrections to the minutes of the February 9th and February 18th meeting? If not,
Also January 26th should be on your agenda. Those were not approved yet either.
I was looking at the most or the first agenda. Thank you, Pam. So are there any corrections to the minutes of January 26th, February 9th, and February 18th? Seeing none, can I get a motion? Motion by Commissioner Lubes, support by Commissioner Jackson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Alrighty, next up on the agenda is, next up is the approval of the consent and regular agenda. Are there any additional changes or corrections to either the regular or consent agenda? Excellent, seeing none, we need a motion to approve. Approved by Commissioner Lubes, support by Commissioner Joliet. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next up, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee?
Good morning. You currently have no one in the committee room. There are no online or written submissions, and there's no one in your public comment room. So you have no public comment this morning.
Thank you, Andrea. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Next up, we'll move on to communications. One of the things that I would like to request, given that we have a informational presentation by Better with Breakfast as our first item on the agenda, I'd like to move to the first item, which is the Better with Breakfast presentation, and then come back to the communication item A to receive and file. Do any commissioners have any problems with that? All righty. Seeing that, we'll go on to our first agenda item, which is our Better with Breakfast presentation.
And I just have a question about the consent agenda. Were you going to approve the consent agenda first before we go to the regular agenda item? Or are you going back to that too?
So yes, so when I did the both consent agenda and the regular agenda, Pam, do we go back?
Well, now we need to approve the items on the consent, and that would be a roll call for the items on consent. If you wish to do that now.
I think she might be frozen.
I think she froze. Are you there, Kristen?
Did you hear me? I think you had some interference.
I think we had some interference. I don't know if it's on my end, but I'm like, I think everybody is frozen on my end.
Madam Chair, the consent agenda, I know this is the first time we've had a consent agenda at this committee, but there are items, you can take one roll call motion for all of them at once. So my question was, if you wanted to do the consent agenda before we go to the regular agenda, just do the roll call on those?
Yes,
Or-
please.
Okay.
So are there any changes to the consent agenda? Alrighty, roll call, please.
Roll call on items 1 through 4, Commissioners Gershenson,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Lutz,
Yes.
Joliet,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Excellent, thank you. Next up, we'll move on to the regular agenda. Item number 1, which is the Better with Breakfast presentation.
Chair Nelson, if I may interrupt for just a moment, can we have caller number 2 announce themselves?
Sure.
Hi, everybody. This is Sarah Gold. My computer does not work with GoToMeeting, so I have to dial in by phone as well as through the computer. So that's just Sarah Gold joined up twice.
Is it S-A-R-A or S-A-R-A-H?
SARA.
I can edit your name for you. Okay, and I'm going to make
Thank
Brian a presenter for us.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Before we begin, can I get a motion for item number 1 of the agenda? Motion by Commissioner Joliet, support by Commissioner Jackson. All right. Welcome, Brian. Good morning.
Well, Madam Chair, is there, can I tee them up and introduce them?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this is a great opportunity to not only check in the progress of a project that this board helped be a catalyst to lead to getting access to breakfast for thousands of Oakland County students, started some years ago. There's another item on the agenda which is related to recognizing the importance of school breakfast that you'll be considering a little bit later in today's meeting. But I just want to tee up, and there's some new members, just to give some historical context. This is something that started, frankly, when myself and some other commissioners had an opportunity to see a demonstration project of improving the logistics of getting access to breakfast. It was a high school in Hazel Park, and at that moment, the idea was conceived: could we scale access to breakfast all across Oakland County, and particularly for lower school buildings with students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and remove stigma, increase access. I'm happy to report that that this pilot project, to be a demonstration of what was possible, would it work? Identify additional challenges that are necessary to be addressed so that we ensure that our future leaders can best succeed in school. It nicely aligns with the Oakland 80 initiative that our county executive talked about, and making certain that to help put people on a trajectory for success in education and long-term investment in education attainment. And I'm really proud of this partnership between ourselves, Oakland Schools, and United Way that put this into motion. And so you've got Brian Van Dorn and Sarah Gold with United Way, and I'll let them introduce themselves individually. But it's been I think just kind of like to tease it up, a huge success, demonstrating that has gained the attention of the state, as well as national awards that we were awarded, a national award for this program with the National Association of County Officials. And so I think it is a testament in which creativity is the bounds of the limits of what's possible. I'm really excited to kind of see it conclude as we wrap up this program, and then kind of like set a course forward of what's next and how do we continue to make certain that we improve success for children, access to breakfast. And this all started before the pandemic, before additional food insecurity issues came to surface, before a series of other things. And so I'm just like, I think the timing is right. I mean, to have this conversation of like kind of wrapping up what we're talking about, what are the success were through this program, and then figuring out what the next steps are. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian and Sarah, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to continue to work with you on this program. I'm going to turn it over to Brian to walk us through exactly what you said, sort of an update about where we are and where we're going with Better with Breakfast. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that Better with Breakfast and the work that we've done with Oakland Schools and the county is just one small part of the work that we've done together over the course of the last year. On behalf of United Way, I just wanted to thank the county for your partnership and your continued investment in people in need during this pandemic. Together, we have invested millions upon millions of dollars into health and human services organizations, schools, child care providers, and individuals and families in need over the course of the last year. And we're really proud of that partnership and proud to continue to work with you. And as we hopefully start to see a light at the end of the tunnel in this pandemic and schools begin to reopen and students are back where we know that they need to be in school and together and benefiting from the resources of those school buildings and that environment, it makes sense to turn our attention back to Better with Breakfast and how we can ensure that access to programs is there to stay in all of our schools in Oakland County. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian Van Dorn to give us that update.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'm going to do my best here with these multiple windows at the same time. I might struggle for a second here as we get started. Give me just one more moment. Sorry, I know you all are. Why does that happen? It says that my screen sharing is paused. Let's see. Okay. Try this. I think I have conquered it. Okay, thank you everyone for your patience. I really appreciate the opportunity to be back in front of this group. We have a long history, as David mentioned, as Chairman Woodward had mentioned, going back to 2017 in that Hazel Park High School, but I wanted to give you just a quick brief history of where we as a United Way have been working on these issues well before the pandemic. Since 2012, United Way has been working to strengthen and improve the child nutrition system by supporting schools, community organizations, local governments to maximize the use of federal funds and to curb childhood hunger through programs like Meet Up and Eat Up, the summer food service program that many of you may have heard of, the Child and Adult Care Food Program, as well as the National School Breakfast Program. The School Breakfast Program has been available nationwide since 1972, and it's happening in nearly every school building every single day. One of the reasons that we're working to improve breakfast participation is because every day school lunch is accessible to every student. It's built right into the middle of the schedule. And that's not the case with breakfast in most schools. School breakfast is traditionally only offered before school and only in the cafeteria. And this isn't where the majority of students are in the building, and this isn't when they typically get there. Bringing breakfast directly to students at the start of the day ensures that any student that needs it can get it. So we began working with schools all around the region to flip their breakfast models. And one of those schools was Hazel Park High School. So in 2017, as Chairman Woodward had mentioned, the National School Breakfast Week is something that's celebrated each year. And we invited a group of state and local legislators, along with some media, to see what breakfast looks like when it's offered to all students. Broader access to this program has been linked to improved math scores among elementary students. It's also been linked to calmer mornings and fewer disciplinary issues. So we were asked by Chairman Woodward, how do we replicate this across the county and beyond? And the truth is, at that point, we had learned that it's not very easy on our own to do that. We were going building by building, trying to convince teachers and administrators that it was a really good idea to change how they operate their school breakfast program. Every school building is different. They have different schedules, different cultures, different attitudes towards bringing food into the classroom or the hallway. And it's because of those barriers that prior to the project's launch in early school year 2018-2019, only 47% of students in Oakland County that were getting a lunch were also receiving a breakfast. Statewide, that ratio is roughly 60%. So from there, we set a goal that at least 70% of all students that were receiving a lunch on an average school day were also getting a breakfast. And we did the math. If we could bring each of the targeted 69 school buildings to 70%, an additional 3,550 kids would be accessing school breakfast each day. That participation increase would draw down an additional $1.2 million in federal meal reimbursements. And that increased revenue flows directly into school district food service departments, pays for any increase in labor, improving meal quality, or upgrading equipment. So this 3-year pilot was established to be a multi-sector partnership between Oakland County, Oakland schools, and the United Way for Southeastern Michigan. It was aimed at building on our proof of concept, achieving some lessons learned, and gaining additional buy-in and support from various stakeholders. And to Chairman Woodward's point, we have done all of those things, from being included temporarily in the governor's supplemental budget just before the pandemic, to being recognized by the Association of Counties, and to also being recognized by the Michigan Health Endowment Fund, which I'll talk about in just another moment. It was the formation of this partnership that led to the rapid implementation of bringing breakfast directly to students. Again, we were going building by building, and this project allowed us to have a communications platform and reach out to these 70 buildings to try and flip those breakfast models. Administrators and teachers and students, they have an uphill battle in achieving educational outcomes that they're after. But this initiative, bringing breakfast to all students, it takes hunger out of the equation.
Brian, excuse me, it's Commissioner Gershenson. Is this
Sure.
Are you supposed to have slides that are accompanying what you're saying?
Are you not seeing slides on your screen?
I'm seeing one slide. It hasn't moved. I don't know if anybody else is. Okay. Yeah, it's moving now. Thank you.
Okay, sure. And feel free to let me know. Again, I'm on a small screen and I've got multiple windows. This GoToMeeting app is a little new for me. I'll do my best, but I can also back up and answer any questions as we go. So real quick, I know some of you have seen parts of this presentation before, but I really just want to give an overview of what this project was accomplishing, what it is that we were doing. One, we were providing technical assistance. United Way and Oakland Schools were working directly with school buildings, administrators, teachers, to really tailor the approach to what was going on in their building. What were their bell schedules? What was the issue with their janitorial services? How could we better coordinate to make sure that everyone was happy with the change? We were also providing up to $5,000 in equipment and signage. There was also gap assistance, meaning we had split our targeting into 2 separate tiers. One tier, tier 1 buildings are participating in something called the community eligibility provision, which doesn't require any additional costs to be able to serve free meals to all of those students. Tier 2 buildings, there's an additional investment that was needed to continue to serve all students. Some of those buildings that we were targeting had maybe only 40 or 50% free and reduced students, and we wanted to be able to offer this universally to all students. So since the public launch of this project in 2019, 43 of the 69 targeted buildings had implemented Better with Breakfast, 7 of which had actually occurred during COVID-19, and they're currently rolling out refreshed breakfast programs as the students are re-entering school, both for the remainder of this school year and then thinking about beyond. So while our primary data source here is students eating breakfast in school, that was obviously disrupted by COVID-19. This is what we found by the numbers during the period of implementation just prior to the pandemic. Can everybody see that on the screen there? Trying to evaluate as many buildings as possible, we found that based on actual meal claims comparing a 3-month period of September to November in 2018 to 2019, actual breakfast servings rose by 75% in these buildings that had implemented. That's 150,000 meals. Sorry, switching. This is an increase of 2,569 additional students eating breakfast daily. So just to go back to some of these figures, our original goal was to bring all 69 buildings to 70%, which would net 3,550 students every single day. We weren't able to get to 69 school buildings, and partly that was truncated due to COVID-19. But in the 40 couple buildings that we did implement in, we reached 2,500 additional students. This equated to a 47% increase in revenue into those school districts. And that's just a 3-month period. This is roughly $525,000 that was being infused back into school districts. If we were to extrapolate these figures for an entire 180-day in-person school year, that dollar amount would be north of $1.5 million. So both of those figures would be exceeding our original goal that we had set out to accomplish. So just to get a quick local example of what this looked like in Lamphere schools in Madison Heights, the district went from serving 340 students per day in 2018 to 1,040 students in 2019. This is a 220% increase in servings and 120% increase in federal reimbursement. From a qualitative perspective in Lamphere, we did some surveying, and we had 300 respondents to a survey in Lamphere. We found that there was an outpouring of support for this program. 63% of the 151 parents that were surveyed reported a time savings each morning. 58% reported a tangible budget savings each month. We had multiple teachers reporting that kids seem more alert and ready to learn. Building administrators reported smoother mornings and fewer discipline issues. And then obviously came COVID-19, which obviously changes the game and changes the way that meals are being served. So while the traditional school breakfast program is in a bit of a holding pattern due to students either being at home or having a blended modality, schools have been working tirelessly since the beginning to ensure that their students have access to school meals. States are currently operating these meal programs under the USDA's waivers, which currently provide all students nationwide with access to free meals at no cost during this pandemic. Schools that have already implemented Better with Breakfast in our project, they're likely better prepared for the flexible feeding options that they've had to roll out, whether that be operating pickups, doing multiple days at a time. More than that, the pandemic has provided us with a glimpse at how universal meal programs can truly curb childhood hunger and ensure that all kids are at least on a level playing field when it comes to starting their day. So where do we go from here? The good news is that we're moving forward. The success of this program has caught the attention of the governor's office, the legislature, other counties in Michigan that are seeking to replicate our success, and by the Michigan Health Endowment Fund, who in late 2020 awarded the United Way with a grant to continue this work in Oakland County. Our aim there is to evaluate the program's success while we seek pathways toward replication as well as opportunities to scale. Of the 35 recommendations that were recently made by the Michigan Poverty Task Force, 3 of them are directly related to school meals and breakfast availability specifically. So while our official contract with the county ended in December of 2020, we're going to be continuing to support and encourage those buildings that have yet to adopt our model. And the Health Fund grant will allow us to help cover those costs of equipment and administration. Our partnership with the Michigan Department of Education will see Better with Breakfast branding in schools across the state. And our efforts here in Oakland County, your efforts here in Oakland County, will continue to be a model for ensuring that students start their day in the same way, with breakfast. That is all I have, and I am now available for questions.
Well, thank you, Brian, for that informative information. I believe Commissioner Gershenson.
Thank you. Brian, can you go back over the funding formula? I missed that slide. It was back in the beginning to understand the return on investment for the schools.
Sure. Well, the way that this works is that schools have been participating in the school breakfast program, again, since the 70s. This isn't necessarily a new program. What we're here doing is trying to maximize the use of that program and make it more efficient and allow more kids to access it. So for every single meal that's served, there is a corresponding federal meal reimbursement. Those reimbursement rates are set by the legislature. They come out every year in the Federal Register, and states then have to update their claiming systems accordingly. Those reimbursements allow for costs within the food service department to be maintained. These additional revenues that are coming into school districts, they must go back into what's considered to be a nonprofit school food service account. So these aren't necessarily funds that go into the general fund of a school district, but rather they're going to support their meal programs, all of the child nutrition programs. So if I have an excess revenue from school breakfast, I can use that to purchase additional equipment that will support both breakfast, but also lunch, my summer program, and my child and adult care food or after school meal program. So those revenues are contained and they're insulated within the school food service department, and they're meant to be spent solely on food service operations, labor, food quality, those kinds of things.
So Brian, you said that every meal served, there is a federal reimbursement. So where is the profit? Where does the profit come from that goes back?
Well, profit or excess revenue comes in that this is an economy of scale. If a school district has, say, 5 staff working at the high school, and those staff are primarily working to staff the lunch program, they're there for a good portion of the day. The ability for them to produce either 20 or 200 breakfasts doesn't change that economy of scale very much. And so there will be additional revenue that will come in from the participation gains in that program. Much like with the summer meal program, if a school district is serving summer meals and on a daily basis they're serving 200 summer meals, there's a corresponding reimbursement to that. But the amount of food costs and labor costs that would take to serve 400 summer meals doesn't outpace that reimbursement. So it allows them to either purchase higher quality food, it allows them to upgrade their equipment, it allows them to continue to maintain their labor contracts and continue to hire staff if they need them.
Thank you.
Brian, this is Commissioner Kristen Olson. In regards to the total breakfast graph that you have up there right now, from my understanding, so you have your tier 1 schools and your tier 2 schools. So the way I understand it, so tier 1 schools is where all the students receive free or reduced lunches. And then in your tier 2 schools, not every student qualifies for free and reduced lunches. And it looks like there's actually more schools that are participating that are tier 2 than tier 1. So given that information, where is and has the additional funding come from to help provide free meals to your tier 2 schools?
Sure, that's a great question. And for our tier 1 schools, the reason that there are more tier 2 schools being targeted is because there's a higher percentage of tier 1 schools that have higher free and reduced percentages that were already serving a pretty high percentage of their lunch eaters of breakfast. If we look at schools in, say, Pontiac, not all of their buildings were on our list. And in many cases, that was because they already had pretty substantial breakfast in the classroom programs at some of the elementaries, and they weren't appearing in our targeting models. The funding for that piece came from Oakland Schools and us at the United Way. So the county was covering the cost of the equipment purchase across every one of the 69 buildings we could possibly bring on board, and was also covering the cost of our administration of this project. The actual funding for that gap reimbursement that's needed, that was coming from Oakland Schools and then from us at United Way. We were, the Oakland Schools, the regional ISD, was the conduit for those payments. So for example, in Lamphere, some of those buildings were at 45, 48% free and reduced. They typically wouldn't qualify, or there would be a cost involved at serving this program universally. And that's where Oakland Schools came in with their investment, and we at United Way helped to supplement that as the year went on. To be honest, and we've talked in front of this board as well as other committees across the board. Our participation in some of these buildings, Lamphere being a really good example, Waterford another one, participation was so high. It was much higher than we anticipated. We had anticipated a 20 to 30% increase among reduced or paid students. And turns out that when you make breakfast available for all students, just about all students take that breakfast meal. And so the cost of providing universal meals in some of those tier 2 schools was escalating faster than we had planned for. So at the tail end of last year, we were coming back to any and all funding sources we could locate. That's in part why we were included in the governor's supplemental budget, was to help supplement this initiative to get it across the finish line. Honestly, the COVID-19 pandemic became, for this project, a bit of a blessing, because not only did it allow us to close out last school year with free meals for every student, it also has allowed us to continue this initiative in a district like Lamphere, where maybe the cost might have been prohibitive, but it's allowed them to continue offering free meals across the board for all students, regardless of their income level.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. And my last question is just given the information that you just shared, is there data to demonstrate how many students in the Title I schools who are presently participating in the breakfast program, how many of those students are free and reduced lunch students versus non-free and reduced lunch students? Are you finding that more students who qualify for free and reduced lunches are taking advantage of this program, or potentially even the opposite, students who don't participate, or I'm sorry, students who don't qualify for free and reduced lunches, are they more of the number of participants in your tier 2 schools?
Yeah, the answer to that is a bit of a both and. What we're finding is that students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch and those that were already participating in the breakfast program are participating at higher numbers. At the same time, students that were not eligible or maybe weren't accessing that breakfast are also participating at a higher level. It really depends on the building. Lanphier is a bit of an outlier. They really built a lot of community support within the building, but there are tier 2 buildings that don't have participation figures that show as high as Lanphier. So what happens is everything kind of balances out. And you do have students that weren't eligible that are participating in greater numbers, but that's not necessarily the same case across the board. We could definitely dive into the claims data that we have access to see, the percentage of which students by category are participating in breakfast. If you have some, those specific questions, I can definitely follow up at a later time.
Excellent, thank you. And I just have one last question.
Sure.
In regards to the federal meal reimbursement, I know that you said that there is each school district has their own school food authority.
Correct.
So when schools are getting reimbursed from the breakfast program, from my understanding, how I read it, is schools don't have to put money back into the breakfast program specifically.
That's true. I mean, they do have the ability. Everything is one. Think of it as a company. This is a food service company. If you make all of your revenue on drinks, that revenue can still go to supporting your breakfast operations or any other part of your program. So child nutrition programs are all lumped together under the USDA, and you have again the after school meals program, the school lunch and breakfast program, along with the summer food service program. Surely there should be an easier way, a less complicated system to ensure that kids have access to meals. But here's a really good example. Currently during the pandemic, there are actually no claims that are being made under the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program because everyone's operating under an emergency provision of the summer food service program. So reimbursements are even a little bit higher at this current point in time because all their meals are being served and claimed for under the summer food service program. And those program revenues can go to support all of their child nutrition programs.
Sure.
Typically, where you buy equipment for one program, you can use equipment for another program. We're talking about transporting meals from one side of the building to the other, having multiple access points. Those are things that are valuable tools for any school food service department, regardless of the program that they're operating.
Sure. Is there any way to obtain data information in regards to how many schools are actually putting money back in to the school breakfast program specifically?
It's possible that there's a request that could be made. That information is housed at the Department of Education. Every year, schools are required to complete the financial reporting database where they actually break down costs, because there's a couple of other State Aid Act funding provisions that provide supplemental payments for schools that are providing breakfast to students. So there's a couple of other funding calculations that happen outside of what we're talking about today, and schools are required to report costs in addition to expenses. I'm sure that if we needed to dig far enough, we could do a Freedom of Information Act request and reach out to the Department of Education to obtain some of that cost data.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your responses, Brian. Thank you so much. Are there any other commissioners who have any questions on this agenda item? Commissioner Gershenson.
Just one more, Brian. You said that our contract ended December 2020.
That's correct. The contract that we had originally with the county, the contract that United Way had with the county ended December of 2020.
And the Michigan Health Endowment Fund has now become a funding partner, so we are not a funding partner anymore.
Currently, at this point in time, no. My plan is to issue a final closeout report to this body where I'll make some additional recommendations. We'll break down some of the costs. Obviously, there was that original contract accounted for us reaching all 69 of those buildings. We were not able to do so in the time that we had. So there could be future conversations about, additional ways to continue this project. I can tell you that for any school building that we were not able to reach, again, we're going to continue trying to reach them with the available funds that we have with the Health Endowment Fund, while we continue to explore policy options at the state level. This is also a time for trying to continue to push on making change at the federal level and how these programs operate and who can access them. Again, this pandemic has really provided us with a window into what does it look like when we can provide equitable access to these meal programs for all students.
Thank you.
Excellent. Is there any other further discussion on this item? Seeing none, Brian, again, thank you so much for your time this morning. And I know Sarah had to leave out a little early, and we appreciate her time as well. So thank you so much, Brian.
You're welcome. Thank you all for your time.
Have a good day. Before we move on to the next item on our agenda, I would like to go back to receive and file. Oh, Pam?
Yeah, I believe your motion can be used for the receive and file. I think a voice vote would do.
Okay,
since there's
so
nothing
receive and
else.
file the Oakland County Better with Breakfast Year 2, Quarter 1 through Quarter 4 reports. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? She carried. Thank you so much. Moving on to the next item on our regular agenda, item number 2, which is Human Resources Fiscal Year 2020 Wage Reopener for employees represented by the Governmental Employees Board Labor Council. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Lubes, support by Commissioner Gershenson. All righty. So I believe, do we have April Lynch? Oh, good morning, April.
How are you?
Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. As I mentioned at the last meeting, you're going to see me a lot over the next few months, and I'll promise deliver here. So we do have in front of you we call it Gallup Government Employees Labor Council. Most of these employees are covered under Children's Village. They are one of 4 union contracts that had wage reopeners, and we have completed our negotiations again, as with the others, looking at comparables, looking at internal equity, and adjusting accordingly. Please note that this is a wage reopener, but we are actually opening, I believe 6 of our contracts this year open. So they will be full on open throughout this year. So, but for this particular instance is just the wage reopener. And overall, it's generally about a 3.7% increase across the board. Obviously, it's the same thing as before with the comp study, it averaged out. So some are higher, some are lower, but that was the average.
Thank you, April. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? All righty, seeing none. Roll call, please.
And item number 6, Commissioners Jackson,
Yes.
Luz,
Yes.
Joliet,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sure you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you so much, Pam. Moving on to item number 7. Human Resources, create 1 full-time eligible animal control officer position and deleting 2 part-time non-eligible animal control officer positions. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Lube, support by Commissioner Gershenson. Welcome back again, April.
Thank you. So part of the IBEW contract in 2019 allowed for a committee of sorts to address some concerns over at Animal Control about staffing and some other general ideas. So we met with the team with Bob as well as Deputy Hobbs and the IBEW regarding some of the issues that we were having. And what we were finding is that the turnover on the part-time people was becoming more of an issue. And so it made sense at this point to convert some of our PT&Es and create one full-time position to keep that consistency. So it is budget neutral, and it makes sense for where they are right now to have that full-time employee engaged, and should reduce some of the turnover factors over there.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Jolett.
Hi, thank you. Just a point of clarification. I understand this is net neutral, and you're replacing obviously one full-time with two part-time. Did those two part-time employees receive benefits?
No, part-time just is wages. And I believe they actually are empty. Yeah, they just get wages. They don't have any health care or anything like that.
Okay, but the full-time will get benefits,
They do.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's still net neutral, or the benefits aren't averaged
Well,
in
because
there?
they have 1,000 hours, so it's just the way that it works. There is another position over there, a third PT&E that won't be filled. So it'll actually, it's a little bit of it's all how you word it, but yeah. So that sometimes you need 3 PT&Es, sometimes you need 1, depending on how many hours they get per year and things of that nature. So very good question, but there's a third position over there that won't be, that we're working through, that won't be filled. So that's why it's cost neutral. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other further discussion on item number 7? All righty. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Gotta turn my mic on.
Yeah.
Item number 7, Commissioners Luke,
Yes.
Joliet,
Yes.
Burchinson,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
carry of 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, April. And I believe we have one more item, number 8, which is the Human Resources Voluntary Employee Separation Incentive Program for Schedule C employees. Motion by Commissioner Lutz, support by Commissioner Jolett. All righty.
All right.
Welcome again, April, for the last time.
Order though. All right, so as you know, when we brought forward back in December the VSIP plan for the separation incentive, we had a little caveat of a group of folks that were kind of caught in a hard place of being eligible to retire, but still not quite eligible for 100% of their premiums for the retiree health care to be paid. And so we were kind of working through what that looked like, and that was a little more sticky. There was a lot more things we had to work through in order to take a look at that. So we worked with our legal counsel, our labor attorney, and making sure with a actuary on our VIVA fund, making sure that would not impact that adversely. We now have a plan to bring forward what we're calling VSIP-C, and I'll explain that. So VSIP-C looks very similar to the original VSIP, and as we know, the current VSIP we have is that you can have a separation incentive if you choose to leave, and you would get up to 26 weeks of your salary, or for 1 week for every year you've worked. What we're doing differently here with this VSIP-C, the only caveat that is different is that it's for people who have 20 to 24 years of service. So what we have is called a Schedule C. So we have 4 different schedules of health care for retirees. So walk with me for just a second here. So schedules A and B, most of those folks, I think all of those folks have already been retired and receive some kind of retiree benefits. Then there's the Schedule C group that came in, that was the last group to be able to receive any type of retiree health care. And then you've probably seen in your packet what we call Schedule D. Those are all new hires, I think since 2006, that now have called what's retiree health care plan. So they just get money toward their account, but there is no liability. So we're really focused on this one group, Group C. And we're only focused on those that have 20 to 24 years because they are actually eligible to retire as well, but they're just choosing that they would probably not make sense for them to retire if they're still waiting for the 100% of their healthcare premium. Now, we do have, I believe there's 633 people on Schedule C, but only 78 of them are actually eligible to retire. That doesn't preclude people who are not eligible from taking it, but we would find that generally the most of the people who might take advantage of this would be those 78 folks and not even all of them. So that would be any employee with 20 to 24 years of service. And what we would do for those that are eligible in that particular area is we would reduce their incentive. You can see in the packet, we brought the incentive down anywhere from 10 to 50%, depending on how many more years that they needed to complete that. And so what happens is once they hit their normally what would happen is once they hit their 25th year, they would have 100% premium pay. And so I think it starts all the way from like 15 years where you'd have to pay 60% of your premiums, 65, 75, 80, 85. So it keeps ramping up. And the closer you get to 25 years, the less you have to pay. So that's why we focused on the 20 to 24 year folks. We did do an actuary, and due to the funding, we're about 140% funded on Viva. The actuary indicated that it would have a negligible, I don't know, like that 1 or 2% reduction, which with 140%, it's not going to do anything really to our funding levels.
Okay. Thank you.
So I know it's a little more complicated than the other VSIP, so I would open it up for any questions or if you need any clarification.
Do any commissioners have any questions or comments in regards to this item number 8? Alrighty, well, you did a great job, April, breaking that down for us. Thank you so much. If there isn't any other further discussion on item number 8, let's roll call, please.
On item 8, Commissioner Joliet,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Luce,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us this morning,
See you
April.
next week. See you next time.
Have a good day. Moving on to the next item of our regular agenda, item number 9, which is Central Services Support Service Division of the Courthouse Cafe in Pontiac Extension through 2024. Do I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Luce, support by Commissioner Joliet. This morning, we've got Mr. Todd with us this morning. Welcome, Todd. How are you?
Yes, good morning. Welcome, commissioners. Before you today, the item is to extend the contract with our vendor in the courthouse cafeteria for 3 additional years with the possibility of another 1-year extension after that point. Basically, one of the reasons we decided to do this was due to COVID. He was shut down most of last year. This year he has reopened and doing probably about 15% of his normal business. So our hope was over the extended period of time to kind of help him out and help him recoup some of the losses he's experienced.
Excellent. With the expectations of the jury trials opening up in the beginning, do you think that that's going to impact some increase in business in the cafe?
I hope so, because it's my understanding they're not going to allow the jurors to leave the facility, the building. So hopefully they'll be going down to the courthouse cafeteria.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner Gershenson.
Hi, Todd. I'm really happy that we're doing something to help this family. I know they've been extremely cooperative during the pandemic to help many of the initiatives that required food. So I think it's a good idea that we can try to give them something as well.
Thank you. He's really bent over backwards for us during just everything, even before the pandemic. They've done an excellent job.
Is there any other further discussion on item number 9? Alrighty, seeing none, roll call, please.
On item 9, Commissioners Gershenson,
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Luce,
Yes.
Joliet,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
I'm sure you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Todd. Have a
Thank
good day.
Have a great day. Enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you. Moving on to our next item of the agenda, item number 10, which is the Parks and Recreation Commission approval of the 2021 Michigan Department of Natural Resources Fisheries Habitat Grant Program grant application. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Loop, support by Commissioner Gershenson. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. So this is another grant application for that dam removal project in Springfield. I know I've been here a few times for that, and this won't be the last you're seeing me on this either. We've got several applications out pending. We're keeping our fingers crossed that we get some good news in early March on a few of those, and we're just kind of keeping the ball rolling. So this is for the Fisheries Habitat Program for the DNR. It's an application for $350,000, and then the cash match for that we will split with Springfield Township per our MOU with them. So it's about $96,000 in match from the county and $78,000 from Springfield Township. So this is the program that also funded the design engineering study or design engineering drawings for the project. So we know they're very supportive. So we're hoping that that this one is favorable as well.
Well, thank you, Melissa. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments in regards to this agenda item? Alrighty, seeing none, roll call, please.
On item number 10, Commissioners Jackson,
Yes.
Lubes. Commissioner Lubes? You're muted, Commissioner Lubes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Joliet,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I believe we're still going to have Melissa up for our next item, number 10, which is the Parks and Recreation Commission approval of the 2021. Oh, I'm sorry. Item number 11, which is the Parks and Recreation approval of the 2 easements at Independent Oaks County Park. We have a motion. Motion by Commissioner Lutz, support by Commissioner Joliet. All right.
Thank you again.
Welcome again.
Thanks. So this item is for 2 easements at Independence Oaks County Park. One's a temporary construction easement and one's a permanent highway easement. This is the very northeast corner of Independence Oaks Park, which is right at the corner of Sashabaw and Oak Hill roads. So it's going to be, it's about 3,870 square feet is the highway easement for their road realignment for the roundabout. And it's right on a corner. It's not an area of the park that's even really accessible by the public. It's not detrimental at all to park users. And we do this kind of easement for the road commission for their projects near our parks pretty regularly. The compensation, I think, was a little over $2,000 for the easements for the roundabout. And I know they're looking to get that project going this year. So I do believe Sam Fitzer and Gary Petrovich from the road commission are also on the call if there's any specific questions that any of us can answer.
Excellent. Do any commissioners have any questions in regards to this agenda item? Alrighty. I do have, Commissioner Gershenson, you're muted.
I thought Commissioner Joliet was going to speak to, no?
I can speak.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to priority because it's most of it's in your district.
Right. So I don't really have a question, a comment. I did speak with Supervisor Pat Kittle of Independence Township, being that is his area. And it has been, that intersection has been a concern for some time because it is a major thoroughway or traveled road from Brandon and northern suburbs to get to 75. So people come flying through there, and there have been quite a few bad accidents. So what this roundabout would do would cause traffic to pause or slow down through the thoroughfare.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Joliet. Commissioner Gershenson.
So I wanted to ask the road commission, Gary or Sam, what sort of studies did you do to determine that you needed a roundabout in place of a light?
I'll let Sam take that. lead, please.
Thanks, Gary. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Sam Fitzer, the Director of Engineering for the Road Commission for Oakland County. So the Road Commission has had their eyes on this particular intersection for a few years now. Part of which, part of our process is an extensive intersection study, which includes both an analysis of crash history, traffic safety history, as well as operational analysis, which is a kind of an analysis of the traffic volumes. Part of that, collecting all of that data, putting that together, we analyze both the various alternatives, including a signalized intersection as well as a roundabout intersection. So part of our, I guess, weighing up the pros and cons versus the signalized intersection and the roundabout is, one being the cost, but ultimately at the end of the day, with respect to this intersection, we want to improve traffic safety overall. And as previously mentioned, by the commissioners, is that this is a I guess an intersection of concern with the north-south being 50 miles per hour. People just zoom across this intersection, and one of the characteristics of a signalized intersection tends to be more of an increase in speed, or I guess I'll say that not so much of a mitigation of traffic speed. And with the roundabout itself, it provides exactly what we want to do, is slow down traffic and make sure that motorists are being mindful as they approach this intersection.
So did you look at reducing the speed limit on this road?
Yeah. To my knowledge, no. I think one of the things we do after the fact is we evaluate the speed limit after improvements are made. But I'll ask that Gary to speak more to that speed limit question.
Yeah, I'll take the speed limit issue. The speed limits are set in coordination with the state police under certain laws and regulations, and there would be no reason or ability to lower the speed limit through here. If anything, they might raise it if the state police looked at it.
Gary, has this issue, I understand we are not voting on the roundabouts. We are voting on the easements. Now, has the roundabout issue, did that come before the commission?
The full commission or
the actual roundabouts, who approved that?
The road commission approves that.
Okay, so that is not an issue for the commissioners then to debate. That is your decision. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, because I understand that there has been some concern voiced by I think there's one retail establishment that's affected, and he has definitely come out strongly against it. Have you shown in any of your data, because there are many roundabouts in my district, have you shown that roundabouts have hurt retail operations?
We have not. We don't have any information to show that it's worse. The only lawsuit directly brought against one of our roundabouts, we came out in the positive on. So we have no indication across the country. Studies show that there's actually economic development through these. So anytime we make a change at an intersection, there's going to be somebody who's unhappy. That's not unusual. Anytime we do a road project, there's going to be somebody who's unhappy. So we try to work with them the best we can to make sure we come to a solution. But it's not realistic to get everybody on board.
I understand that. Believe me, my family's been impacted by roundabouts quite a bit. I know you can't get everyone on board, but this is one vendor. And so you have attempted to work with this vendor?
We have, we're in the condemnation side, so we can't speak in details about that because it's a lawsuit. So the lawsuits are heavily favored towards the property owners. So they'll get their say, and we'll work through the process and negotiate a solution that will be, at the end of the day, we'll get to a solution that we both can live with.
Do you know how much land will be taken from this establishment?
I'll defer that back to Sam, but I know there's no impact relative to parking that will occur.
No impact to parking?
No impact to parking. This is all green space we're taking. So there's no there. And so again, I don't want to get into too many details about conversations and stuff because it is a ongoing lawsuit right now, which is typical in any condemnation case.
Thank you. Do any other commissioners have any questions or comments on this agenda item? Alrighty, well, thank you so much, Melissa, Sam, and Gary. Seeing that there is no further discussion, roll call, please.
On item number 11, Commissioners Loos,
Yes.
Joliet,
Yes.
Gershenson,
I'm really torn on this one. I'm sorry. I'll support it in committee, but if I support it, it doesn't go on the agenda, right? So then I actually will vote no.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 4 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you, Sam, Gary, and Melissa for your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next item of the agenda, item number 12, which is the authorization for the continuation of the National Association of Counties Live Health Discount Prescription Drug, Dental and Health Program Agreement. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Loop, support by Commissioner Jackson. Alrighty. Just to kind of give a little bit of background, I know Commissioner Joliet, I'm not sure if you're too familiar with this, but Oakland County in 2006 partnered with the National Association of Counties to offer the Live Healthy Prescription Discount Program, which provides our county residents the opportunity to save money on prescriptions and dental care and health services. More specifically, while this is not a health insurance, what it is it does provide residents with cheaper discounts on prescriptions. There's a small fee for dental. And also residents can take part of the Minute Clinic discounts provided at like Target pharmacies and CVS. So this resolution is just authorizing the agreement between Oakland County and NACO for the continuation of the Healthy Living Program through 12/31/2021. Is there any questions, comments up for discussion? Commissioner Looms.
Do we know how many people have taken advantage of this program in the last year?
That's a really great question. I don't have that information. Is there anybody on this call that might have this information in regards to how many residents here in Oakland County actually participate?
I do not have the information, but I can get it and send it out to commissioners.
That would be great.
Thank you. My understanding was when the program came out, it was wildly successful. As the years have gone on, I think it's been decreasing, and we have publicized it and moved on. So just curious as to how active the program is.
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner Loops. I know Commissioner Joliet, we do have, I have them right here with us. So I know that when we were in person and live, these were really great handouts. I know for me, I took advantage of our libraries and our senior centers. Obviously, COVID has significantly impacted getting these out and about into the hands of people, but we definitely have a lot of this at our office. So feel free for any commissioners, if you do need more information and more materials, we definitely do have more of those.
Thank you. I was just going to ask, how do you educate the public about registering? So thanks, that helps.
Absolutely. Reach out to staff, Commissioner Joliet, and we'll make sure that you walk away with some boxes of these materials.
Okay.
Excellent. Is there any other information on this item? Seeing none, roll call, please.
On item 12, Commissioners Joliet,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Luce,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you so much. Moving on to item number 13 of our regular agenda. Board of Commissioners improve access and provide express delivery of death certificates issued by the Oakland County Clerk's Office to funeral homes. Do I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Jackson, support by Commissioner Luce. I know that we have a few additional commissioners joining us. We have Commissioner Powell and Chairman Woodward, who would like to speak on this. And in addition to, I believe we have our clerk, Lisa Brown, with us as well. So item is open for discussion. Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. This resolution was brought just mainly as a customer service matter in the beginning of it, due to complaints that Commissioner Powell, myself, were getting in our districts from our funeral directors, and seeing the large number of disproportionate COVID deaths in our communities, and our funeral directors expressing delays in receiving death certificates, which causes, as the resolution states, collection of delay of collection of, or potential delay of collection of insurance benefits, and making arrangements with funeral homes. The certificates were taking longer than the previous 7 to 10 working days due to our clerk's office not being open. So this resolution was brought to temporarily cover the delivery costs of death certificates via overnight mail through this September. So I think that Commissioner Powell and Commissioner Woodward also want to speak to this today. I'm in favor thus far of the resolution. We aren't really trying to tell the clerk what to do or to usurp or disrespect her authority within her office whatsoever. Just this is just in a response to customer complaints. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Powell, followed by Commissioner Joliet.
Well, thank you, Chair. So yes, just like Commissioner Jackson said, I did get some complaints from a couple of my funeral director locations. And I did also have a conversation with our clerk to discuss some possibilities of some options. I see that she has implemented some things. But one of the things, it was crazy because I'm actually a executor over a will. And I was able to kind of follow the process to see, just have a feel of what the experience could be like for the funeral directors. And just so everyone knows, the death certificate is like the ticket for you to get the pass to start conducting a lot of business post funeral matters or bills getting paid, yada, yada, yada. So you need that document. And if we're having an issue where it's being stalled, where they're not getting it in a perfect, a better, shorter time frame, that can delay a lot of things. And I guess the operational purposes of the funeral home, dealing with the families and the families moving on with whatever responsibilities they need to take. So as I see the process for myself dealing with another county, in regards to the same, I could understand, some of the concerns with the funeral home. So that was really one of the only things that was stressed. And like Commissioner Jackson stated, yes, we thought that we should try to get involved or try to see where we can assist in this matter, because one thing we taught our professionalism on is great customer service in any of our departments in our county. So when I hear negative news, especially in my district, I want to try to get ahead of it and try to put some solutions in place. And when they explained what the process was pre-COVID and then what we are experiencing now, it wasn't even a middle of, you know what I mean? There was no middle ground. And I'm like, well, we went from you can get it that day to now it's 2-3 weeks. And then we know the post office has an issue. People are still getting Christmas gifts right now as we speak. So for us to try to help her from a budgetary standpoint and provide the clerk some additional assistance with mailing, I think that was a great offer. So I just wanted to bring that to all of the commissioners' attention, and that is why we went to the chair, Dave Woodward, to have this discussion to see how we can assist our clerk in making sure we're not getting any of those negative attacks or comments from our district. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Joliet.
Hi, thank you. I can completely understand and appreciate the need for a death certificate, having past family members that have died and things that it triggers once you have that death certificate. My question more is the funding. What metric was used to derive the $50,000, being that the complaints were received obviously during last year, the pandemic, which were unprecedented deaths. So I'm just curious what algorithm or what was used to derive the $50,000 needing for overnight. And also, I have a question for Clerk Brown as to if she has had any other ideas or solutions to address this problem, rather or in addition to overnighting things.
Lisa, were you?
Yeah, well, I didn't know because I know things go through you, Madam Chair, so I didn't know if I.
No, go right ahead, Lisa.
So, and I mean, I was planning on speaking after Chair Woodward, so if I can do all that after, if Commissioner Joliet is okay with that, I'd rather, that way I can address everything. And, but as far as, yeah, I'll let him speak and then I'll go after if that's okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Commissioner Powell, followed by Chairman Woodward. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to point out to Commissioner Gillette that those concerns just recently came. So it wasn't, you know, stuff from carryover from last year. No, we just got these complaints within the last month. Just so you know, this is a new issue that she had to look at putting some new measures in place for. So I just wanted to correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Commissioner Powell. Chairman Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I can answer a little question, kind of where the number came from and what it was predicated on. But I mean, as Commissioner Jackson and Powell talked about, I think they summarized it. I believe, I mean, you may or may not, we can send it around. There was a Detroit News article, I believe, over the weekend that, I mean, actually lifted up. I mean, in some cases it's taking, I think it was reported 6 to 8 weeks. And if that's a mail issue, and certainly no one disagrees by the health protocols to reduce public traffic through our county complex and things like that. What is a solution without having to be a draw or a drain on other clerk operations and the clerk's operation budget? So the $50,000 is more of kind of like a kind of a placeholder, short of knowing what's the average death certificates processed every single month. Looking at between now and the end of the current fiscal year, this certainly would be a reimbursable cost because the reason why we are doing it is to, again, minimize, it's a COVID response. And so as additional COVID dollars become available, certainly is reimbursable, and setting up an account of enough dollars that can get us at least through the end of the fiscal year, or to a point in which we go back to, and I hesitate to say this word, like more normal operations. I mean, if we get herd immunity and whatever the determinations that would allow for more public traffic to the court, whenever that happens. If that happens sooner than September, then certainly authorization to draw on these dollars to support. I mean, FedEx, I know the county has a arrangement with FedEx where we could be able to put those things out as a way of trying to streamline the access to this. The thing I guess I will talk about that I've also been contacted by a funeral homes. And I mean, at the end of the day, and certainly I mean, this maybe impacts some communities differently than others, that, as Commissioner Powell mentioned, that death certificate is really necessary in some cases to access resources to pay for the funeral that just happened. I think that's probably more prevalent in certain communities. I can speak from my own family experience and how important that is. Anything that helps, curtail that. And I want to applaud the clerk for, setting up recently the appointment process. That's one way to do it. But if having these dollars available to the clerk to be able to process these things can help even further streamline things, reduce traffic of people having to come to the complex. I think that helps further our public health protocols that we've got to put in place. And so that's the general idea. Without having an exact number, it was kind of like looking over the time that we had, looking at kind of like death projections, and it basically it's like 700 times 10 per month. That number might not work out. Maybe we are actually processing more than 700 a month. Maybe we're doing less than 700 a month. But this is dollars that would be reserved exclusively for the processing of death certificates to funeral homes. And if those dollars aren't used, clearly they would be rolled back into the general fund. So I'll stop there and hand it over to you, back to you, Madam Clerk. Madam Chair, for the clerk.
Thank you, Chairman Woodward. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. And just I want to introduce, I have my Chief Deputy Clerk with me as well, Jennifer Howden. So I'm going to say a few things, and then if it's okay, I'd like her to explain some other things as well in the office. And I guess before I even get it, I know Chair Woodward just talked about COVID money. I don't know if the resolution has been updated because the copy I had, it said planned use of balance. It didn't say COVID money. So I don't know if that's a typo or if there's an updated version. I did find some typos in here. So I don't know if this has been cleaned up since the version that I got, but, and I'm happy to point out the typos if you want to have a cleaner version. But along with the typos, there is some information in here that is incorrect. It says that we're currently open by appointment only for urgent matters. That's not accurate. For the last month, we have been open by appointment for everything. And people can either call to make an appointment or they can do it online. And we created appointments that are exclusively for funeral homes, separate from an individual needing a death record. And the reason for that is that those appointments are allotted for our staff a half an hour. And we, presume that the funeral homes will keep their appointment. Everybody else, it's a 15-minute time slot, and we have almost a 20% no-show rate for people who have made appointments for anything, whatever it be. So, allotting that half hour for those funeral homes and knowing that time will be, somebody's going to show up for that. We're assuming that they will. Although we did have a funeral home that made an appointment for one of their customers on the funeral home time slot, and that customer didn't show up, and then they had to schedule another appointment. So that was a little frustrating because now we've wasted, really kind of 45 minutes on that. But whatever, that's going to happen. And then the next line says that we've limited the number of decedents' death certificates a funeral home can request. That's also incorrect. Again, with that half-hour time slot, as opposed to a 15-minute time slot, they can order however many decedents they have to, they're there for, and however many records they need for each decedent. They can also make multiple appointments, but there are no limitations. So there is information in here that is just 100% inaccurate. So I don't know if somebody would be willing to make a motion to take out the incorrect information, but that would probably be a good idea. As far as the $50,000, you know, I've been asked by my fiscal analyst, what do I think that amount would be? There's no way for us to determine that. When we are mailing out vital records, first of all, we are mailing death records, not just to funeral homes, but also to individuals. But we're also mailing out marriage licenses and birth records. And when you're talking about, so straight line projection would be 90,000 at this point. But when you're talking about people having access to whatever it be, insurance or anything like that, I think you need to keep in mind that it goes beyond death records. So we have people who get married, and to get on your spouse's insurance through their work, perhaps they need a marriage license. They need a certified copy of their marriage license. So you need to, you know, look at a maybe broader picture of what you're trying to accomplish here, or what your thought process, because it's more than just death, where somebody needs that record to, you know, make things happen with birth, to have your child on your insurance, or to get that Social Security number, or whatever, you know. So there's other aspects here that are impacted. Moving along. Oh, I guess I should also mention that my office is not the only place that someone can get a death record from. And I'm not saying, hey, go somewhere else. I'm just, for informational purposes, in Oakland County, we have 6 local registrars besides us. Those are cities that have birthing hospitals. Now, like Pontiac, they gave theirs up years ago, the ability to be a local registrar. So we handle their records. But like Southfield, Royal Oak, Farmington Hills, Madison Heights, Troy. Did I just name them all? I think I named them all. Okay. Farmington, yeah, did I name 6? Okay, so they also, because they're birthing hospitals, they are local registrars, so they have birth records and death records for people who pass away in their city. So for some funeral homes, if they are located in one of those cities, and the majority of their clientele also resided in that municipality, in that city, they may be used to going to that local clerk to get death records and not coming to us as much. Obviously, it's more convenient to go to one that's in the municipality you're located in than, you know, driving to our office or to the satellite office. You know, not only my county colleagues, but some of our local clerks as well are still really not open to the public. And so it has pushed more funeral homes to us that would normally be going more to their local clerks. They're now coming to us more. So we're having a greater demand in that respect as well. And then I guess the clarification, again, if you're just doing funeral homes, which again, if your concern is for people to be able to do the things they need to do, you might, you know, like I said, marriage, birth, those things are required as well. But in the be it further resolved that the Board of Commissioners request Oakland County Clerk's office to lift restrictions. Nope, that one, because that's not true. I already said that. So that's in there twice, that there's a restriction. That's not accurate. There are no restrictions. Sorry, the one before that, temporarily waiver. So I think that's a typo or grammatical thing. Fees to deliver death certificates. If you're just talking about funeral homes, then you might want to add that in there to clarify that that's what you're referring to, as opposed to just all death records. And then the part about us exploring shipping carrier express, like that's not part of my job. We work with the mailroom and it goes from there. And I'm going to let Jenny explain more about that aspect of it. I do have a question about within the 5 business days of the online order that they have within 30 days to replace it. I guess the other kind of issue that I have, so as I said, we have these appointments today. I know when Jenny checked a little while ago, we had 10 available. Is that right, Jen? Sorry. We had 10 slots available out of 14, which means there's only 4 appointments that have been taken. Tomorrow, all 14 are available at both of our locations. Remember, we have 2 locations, so that's 28 appointments for funeral homes, none of which have been claimed. Nobody's making those appointments. And I do have a concern with this money being spent when there is 2 places, I mean, besides if they went to their locals, but some of our locals aren't open, as I said, or are opening in a few weeks. I think Southfield is opening March 15th, I think. I know Royal Oak, I believe, has limited public hours or something. So every clerk's office, Troy, they're all doing something different. I think that was everything I wanted to add, and I'm going to turn it to Jenny in case I forgot anything. I know there's a few things I wanted her to touch on, like the IT aspect. I'm going to let Jenny talk about that, and how that process would work for us. Sorry, I'm just trying to read my notes again. I'll put on my
That's
glasses.
okay. So in the meantime, Madam Clerk,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So again, last budget, we were given budget tasks and asked to make cuts. And again, for this, I guess, coming year, or I don't know, future, in the next, I think 5 years, we have been asked to reduce positions. So it's hard for me to see like spending money on this when I had to cut, over $500,000 from my budget last year, and I'm being asked to reduce how many positions we have in our office. That money could be spent on having an employee instead. But Jenny, do you want to fill in the blanks that I left off and talk about IT a little bit and the IT process and all those sorts of things, please?
So, Madam Clerk, before we go to Jennifer, let's go to, I believe we've got Commissioner Powell, and was there one other commissioner? No, so Commissioner Powell followed by Jennifer. Oh, and that, are you good?
I can wait after Jennifer.
Okay, thank you. So, Commissioner Powell.
So I wanted to kind of narrow this. I'm a little frustrated with your comments, Clerk, and I'm just gonna be straight to it. First off, accessibility. We've had an increase in deaths with COVID, and you're gonna sit up here and say, oh, well, it came off as if you're like, well, let's let the other cities handle it. And I'm not gonna worry about accommodating the increase in death certificates. No, we're the bigger department and bigger location that can probably accommodate that. And if by you being ahead of that department came and addressed us for your needs, because if you're needing more assistance in processing these death certificates, then we need to try to give you the funding, the resources, everything you need to make sure that we don't get those type of calls or complaints. And then you're going to say, well, if they need a death certificate, they need a marriage certificate, they need this. We're talking about death certificates right now. We are not talking about no marriage, no none of that. So can we tailor to one thing? You're adding other stuff. It sounds like you all over the place. No, we're not going to do that. And then you're going to say by appointments. Yes, if you slotted those appointments, we have funding to cover the staff if they're to be there, to be at those appointments. So you're like, oh, we have 10, we have 14, we only have this many, there's not that many. Who cares? Offer the accessibility, because you went from being able to get everything done in a day to now it's taking 2-3 weeks, people getting processed. We got all this frustration with COVID. We got people dying left and right, and we can't accommodate for a death certificate. I'm floored. End of my conversation. That's all I needed to say.
I think you misunderstood me, Commissioner Powell. What I was saying with
No, I didn't misunderstand nothing. And we can talk offline. But right now, I'm floored. It does not seem like you're trying to address a situation that at the end of the day, we're the 3rd richest county in the nation. We should be able to take care of anything. And when that situation come up and it's as minor as death certificate, I'm floored. I'm floored. And the only reason why I'm floored is because yes, it's happening in my district. And we all know that African Americans is at the top of COVID deaths. So if we can't move the funeral, if we can't move the bodies or the families to give them the proper comfort over a death certificate, I can't. I'm over here. I can't. I'm frustrated. So I think that if you can go back to the drawing board and figure some things out for your department and for you all to run smoothly with dealing with death records, we need to have an off conversation, because that what you just delivered, I have issues with that.
Commissioner, but they can come in. What I'm saying is there's 10 appointments available today. If somebody needed to come in today, they can come in today and get the records today.
I understand that, but you saying it as if, oh, it's a waste of my staff time because they're not filling up the appointments. How many people know that you even opened that? Did you send out a mailer or a notification to let everybody know that on the funeral home that these are the new things?
Yes, I did.
And then let me clear this too for my colleagues. You just put that in place for us to have appointments. It just started over a month. Don't be on here as if you had this set up like 2-3 months ago. No, this all came because of the situation with the death certificate. And I feel like if you set up for 3 days during a week for 8 hours for people to be able to come in there, hey, we got the money, we have the resources to set up any type of way. So no, I just didn't like your presentation today. That just sounds like a excuse and you trying to push stuff off. That's what I felt. And y'all know I'm very transparent, and it's a death certificate. And I'm going through it with Genesee County, and trust me, I know we way more professional than Genesee, because if you knew half the stuff I'm going through with Genesee County, oh no, I don't even want to experience that. So that's why I'm frustrated that we got this minor situation with death certificates. And then you're going to talk about birth certificates and marriage license. Yes, we know that that's an issue, but as of right now, we're addressing you about death certificates.
So the reason being that when we look at the line item and you're pulling out $50,000, we can't determine what that amount is because we have all kinds of vital records that are in that same line item. It's not separated for staff and it's not separated for, and yes, the appointment check has changed. Excuse me, I'd like to respond.
One at a time, please.
Until February 1st, we were under a different, this pandemic, everything is constantly changing as to what the orders are. If you remember way back originally in March, we were completely shut down and everybody was told, go home, basically. Now, we couldn't go home. We had to keep staff in the office because we had to process death records and birth records. We are required. That was like our number one task. As things have ebbed and flowed throughout this, we have had appointments before. We've been, but then we were under a different kind of, shut down, whatever words you want to use again. February 1st was a time when there was another new lift. And so with that, and we then expanded the appointments because yes, right before that, with the latest semi-shutdown or whatever, we were only having people come in who could not do their business with us the other way, but in person. And again, as you said, other counties are handling differently. Some of my colleagues are still shut down. So, we're doing what we can. But what I'm telling you, people can come in today and get them today. And that has been going on, yes, for a month. This wasn't happening in January because we were under a different, I don't like calling it a shutdown order, but whatever you want to call it. So we have constantly been changing our processes through this pandemic as different orders have been coming through from Lansing. So and again, because of COVID, we have so many employees working from home. And I want you to understand that death records, all vital records, are printed on, I call it pretty paper, but it's for a certified copy. That's not something that we can have an employee do from home. We can't have them take that paper home and print them from home. They have to do that in the office. They're numbered. It's, we don't want anybody having access to that paper that shouldn't. So, and we have people sitting every other spot because of COVID. But we have been Now, I understand the frustration with the mail. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it is frustrating. And you're right. People are still getting holiday gifts. But that's why these appointments, now you don't have to rely on the mail. You can come in and get it the day that you need it. And you, like I said, there's no limitations. So.
Thank you, Madam Brown. I'd like to move on to Jennifer, followed by Chairman Woodward.
Hi, everyone. I just am talking to the points of the mail or the IT situation when we order online. And when a funeral home orders online, we don't know that they're a funeral home. There's no place for a company through the Oakland County ordering process. And a lot of times the funeral homes are now moving to having the death certificates sent directly to the informant's home. So instead of having them sent to the funeral home and then the funeral home passes it on to the informant, they're directly giving the address within the order to ship directly to the funeral home. So we would have a concern that we would have to address with our online ordering process that IT would need to be involved with to assist with this.
Thank you.
As well as the cart, right? So I guess right, Jenny? So the question being, if somebody's ordering online, they have a choice, and they've always had this choice of regular shipping or expedited shipping. So,
yes, so they would also have to, if someone were to select expedited shipping, it's going to charge the $26.95, I believe, that the post office charges. We move that fee, whatever the post office sets that's their fee. That's what goes to them. So we would have to have some means to alter that. And I'm not certain about whether that is its own separate product. So there's not a rate for a marriage license and then express mailing, and a different express mailing for death certificates. So there would need to be some consideration and some modification made to that entire ordering process. So, and I need to understand this a little bit better. We're talking basically about funeral homes, but the language in here says for death records. So if it's to funeral homes only, then we have a couple other considerations or concerns about making the online process work. If it's to all death certificates, because we have, like I mentioned, that some funeral homes are sending the certified copies directly to the informants, as opposed to sending them to the death certificates or to the funeral homes, who then have to get them out to the informant.
Thank you. Chairman Woodward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I think we don't need to continue to go around. I mean, the conversation here stemmed from a problem, a challenge that raised to the attention of my colleagues, and then, I mean, frankly, to the Michigan Association of Funeral Homes. And we got some really smart people on here, and we have got the most IT savvy county at our disposal, and we have the resources to figure all this out. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is to figure out a way to streamline as easy as possible to get death records to funeral homes. Now, I don't know if I'm hearing this. But I think, in some ways, I think the clerk's comments is like, this isn't necessary, that the funeral homes don't need this service to be able to expedite this service. I tend to disagree with that. Based on what I've heard so far, it seems like an add-on to what Jennifer has mentioned. There might need to be some IT adjustments into the order line form. Well, if that's the case, let's pull IT into a conversation and what can be done. It is mind-boggling to me that it's not easy for us to determine how many death certificates we process every single year. I think we frankly should be tagging that. We should be able to, excuse me?
We do know that number. What we don't know is how many,
I just want to friendly reminder, if you want to speak, please raise your hand and I'll call in the order in which it was called. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess in terms of coming up with a number, using that number should be an easy thing. I'm not saying that, obviously there are death certificate records that are requested or people who have long passed and not for a funeral home perspective, but at least that would give us an upper bound. The question around resources to be able to do this, I look at from anything that if we can reduce public interaction with our buildings, that decreases risk of spread and everything until we get to herd immunity and everything. So anything we can do that is reasonable, we should consider doing. We have the resources to do it. I think it aligns with a public health mandate that I think we all agree on, and we can get it out there. If we want to have a conversation, if the clerk's office wanted to have a conversation, like, is there another way to get these things out to minimize the public coming in to get access to vital records? Let's have that conversation. This resolution was intended to address a problem that was brought forward. And I think just like anything, like, wow, we can solve a few other things like this. Let's consider it. I am a little frustrated at how hostile this conversation is. We're talking about making dollars available to use infrastructure that exists to get vital records, in this case, death certificates, to funeral homes quicker. And then when just this weekend, our clerk's office communicated to the public, yeah, it's taken 6 to 8 weeks, blaming the mail service. And I've got a lot of frustration with the mail service. Then we should find another way to do that, because this is done so electronically. We do need personnel on the office to be able to process these things. If we need 72 hours to process it, we can. But the reasonable thing to figure out, like, okay, great, once they're processed, let's throw them in, FedEx envelopes and ship them out. I mean, our board of commission staff used to send packets out in the mail. We found a way to start doing that electronically. Obviously, vital records, you can't do that. To me, this is a problem that's easily solved. I will take issue with the things that were in there. It absolutely was the policy that we limited people to 3 descendants. I actually had a department that when people were coming in and said they could only get 3 for 3 descendants, and I reaffirmed, I verified that being the case. Now, I don't know if it was a formal policy or it was practice or it was within the 15-minute times. It doesn't matter. The point is like, whatever these records are, we should figure out a way to get it to them as quickly as possible. And if it costs a little bit extra money on postage, we have the resources to be able to do that. Where is the unallocated, again, if you any dollars that CARES dollars from the first round, most recent stimulus, we used to pay down approved personnel expenses, which is going to result in our fund balance increasing. So it's it's baked in there. So this is not an unreasonable expense to be able to do that. If the answer is, it's like, no one's going to even use this, then no one's going to use it. But if all of a sudden people start using it, then I would argue that the need exists there. And frankly, if it results in less people coming into our building and helping with some efficiency, then I say, great, at least through the rest, till like September, through this fiscal year, why we wouldn't consider that. So, my hope is that, IT, the clerk's office, maybe, Commissioner Janet Jackson and Angie Powell, can huddle together, like, okay, maybe there's a different way to kind of figure this out. Let's do it.
Okay, Commissioner Gershenson for the first time, followed by Madam Clerk for the last time, followed by Commissioner Jackson.
Well, I think we're going in circles. I understand there may be some corrections that need to be made to the resolution, but I would like to call for the vote. I feel I've heard both sides. I don't need any more information to vote, so I'd like to call for the vote.
Okay. Before we do that, Commissioner Gershenson, if commissioners don't mind, I'd like to give Commissioner Jackson and Commissioner Joliet an opportunity, given that they did not have an opportunity to say anything in regards to this item.
Sure.
So is that all right? Okay, excellent. So Commissioner Jackson, followed by Commissioner Joliet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add very quickly that because I've been in communication with the funeral home directly, and before the appointment process was instituted and after the recent appointment process was instituted, I was told that it does satisfy some of their concerns, but not all of them. They would prefer to have an option, and it would be in the name of customer service to really help them to give them that option. I just want to say when they came up there the last time, I was told that they were referred to as troublemakers, which was not a good example of customer service as well. Just because they complained about what was going on earlier than the appointment process was given to them. When you spoke about the appointment process, Clerk Brown, and you said that there are plenty of available appointments, that was indicative to me of a lack of communication with the funeral directors. They don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's on the website. How are they supposed to find out you made a process improvement? And if you could speak to that, because I don't want to be belabor this any longer than necessary either. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Joliet.
Clerk Brown can go ahead of me, and then I just have one comment, so.
Okay, Clerk Brown for the last time, followed by Commissioner Joliet.
Thank you. Yes, I did ask their association to share that information with all of them and provided the link for them to make the appointments. So, as I said before, if you want to put, money in our metered postage, I don't have a problem with that. I'm not arguing with that. I just want to make it clear that it's not as easy. There's moving parts to this, like the IT part, that, it's not like you guys can pass this and then we're automatically doing that. Because there's going to have to be IT changes. So I don't have a problem with this. What I want, I don't have control over everything. So I can't do the IT. We have to have IT do that, and they'll have to put in the hours for that. But as I said, I don't have a problem with the money and the metered postage, but also on the other side that it's how do we know? And that's why I asked and brought up again those other records. When somebody's ordering online, obviously, yes, we'll know a death record from a death record, but we don't know if that's a funeral home's order or if it's, somebody else's order. So there's just some parts that don't make it as clean as, on paper, it seems like it'd be like super easy to do, but it's just behind the scenes, it's not as easy to do. But it's not that I'm happy to take this money in here so we don't have to charge the metered postage or the expedited, whatever, shipping. It's just all these other parts behind it of figuring out how that works. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Joliet.
I just want to, for the record, I support the intent of the resolution. It does sound like there are some challenges, obviously, in certain districts. But it also sounds like there needs to be some tweaks to the resolution. And in my opinion, $50,000 does sound a little excessive, being with the improvements that the clerk has made and communicated. So for that reason, I'm not going to be able to support that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Joliet. And just as a reminder, there obviously are commissioners who would like to help work on creating and tweaking an amendment before it goes to the full board. So I do encourage any commissioners who would like to be a part of that to reach out to staff so we can work on those amendments before going to the full board next week. At this time, I would like to proceed forward with roll call.
On item number 13, Commissioner Gershenson,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Lutz,
Yes.
Joliet,
No.
Nelson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 4 yeas and 1 nay.
Thank you. I appreciate Commissioners Powell and Chairman Woodward and Jennifer and our clerk joining us this morning. Moving on to our last item on the agenda, which is the Oakland County Community Mental Health review and information of the applications received. Do I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner. We don't need a motion because it's informational.
Well, until you decide what you're going to do,
Excellent.
Then the motions.
Perfect. Thank you. I do want to be a little time sensitive as we do proceed with this item. At the same time, I want to make sure that we are thorough and all on the same page with this. As we all know, there are 4 OCHN appointments that will be expiring on March 31st of 2021. Last month, applications were posted for 1 week, and a total of 17 people, including 3 incumbents, have reapplied. There is 1 primary consumer seat, 1 secondary consumer seat, and 2 general public seats. Committee members did receive the applications last week, except for 1 application, which was an incumbent, Dr. Hans, which due to an error of not having the correct email address, we did receive Dr. Hans' application late and as of yesterday. Given that this was an error on our part in regards to not having the correct email address on file, it is understandable that this application
You are frozen. Well, I am the vice chair on this committee, I believe. So I think, oh, are you back? Well, you're muted.
Go through each of the categories to consider. Am I freezing?
You just unfroze. That's good.
So as I just said, I'd like to, for the timeliness, consider each of the categories. So at first, let's open this up for the primary consumer.
So, Madam Chair, since we're going to be discussing these applicants, shouldn't we be off camera?
Yes, I